Architect, just letting them know. Just letting them know that Fleta is still definitely alive. Definitely, well, never mind. Sinatra finds him, and that's gonna be it. This is when Architect feels like it's time to go, hashing them all to bits.
It's just beyond words what this man can do with Blade sometimes. That's ridiculous.
Now before we start, let's take a second to talk about the art of tanking in professional sports. Now, if you don't follow basketball or baseball, the concept of tanking would seem absolutely ridiculous. Why would any professional sports team decide to just lose on purpose? In short, it's because they've decided to trust the process, as any fan of the Philadelphia 76ers would tell you. Instead of throwing money at any chance of short-term success, the team is instead using resources for the long term, planning years into the future. They could be trying to net a bunch of high draft picks, or, in our case, they're waiting for their young, unproven players to develop into stars. Since the pool of talent in professional Overwatch is so huge already, every organization built a team with the intention of winning right now. Every team, that is, except the San Francisco Shock. In this episode of Season in Review, we're going to be taking a look at the Shock season, their highs, their lows, and everything in between, to see if the Shock have actually assembled the league's newest super team. But first, let's take a look at the mystery behind the Shock going into the season. The Shock are owned by NRG eSports, which are one of the largest esports companies out there. Seriously, these guys are everywhere, from the games you'd expect like CSGO, Fortnite, and Overwatch, to games with smaller scenes like Clash Royale or Dragon Ball FighterZ. There was never a question in anyone's minds that this company would end up owning an Overwatch League team. But this is where things get interesting. In Contender Season 0, NRG had 6 players on their roster. Numlocked and Harblue were on tank, IDDQD and Yumasui were on DPS, Grego and Dummy were on support. After a poor showing, however, NRG ended up releasing almost everyone, with IDDQD being the only holdout. One of the greatest mysteries in the competitive Overwatch scene for a time was who was going to be Team NRG. Well, eventually, we finally got our answer. The initial roster of the San Francisco Shock included 7 players: Nomi and Nevix on tank, Dante, BabyBay, and IDDQD on DPS, Sleepy and Dak on support. They also signed Sinatra the DPS and Super on tank, but those 2 players were not yet eligible to play due to the age requirement. They wouldn't be able to play until around Stage 3. Unlike the Fuel or the Mayhem, who simply took a roster that was already playing together, the Shock's roster was joining players from all over the competitive scene like LG Evil, Selfless, Arc6, Immortals, Kongarna. You get the picture. Most of these people had never played with each other before, and it may have had an effect on them in the beginning of the season. The Shock in Stage 1 were weak. Just weak in every position. There's really no other way to say it. I mean, BabyBay came out and immediately impressed with his hit scan play. His Soldier in particular was one of the best in the league. Sleepy also emerged early as a solid Zenyatta player. Other than that, there wasn't too much to talk about. The tank line of Nomi and Nevix was unimpressive. Doc's unfamiliarity to Mercy was exposed early and often. Dante was on and off, but mostly off. Like I said before, there's a decent chance that this was a side effect of the team playing together on stage for the first time ever and just starting to gel with each other. To be honest, there isn't very much else to say. Everyone knew this team would get stronger as the team went on, because not only would they continue to gel, but their 17-year-old players would become eligible. Sinatra is a star DPS player that recently turned heads in his performance at the Overwatch World Cup, and Super is a promising young main tank with a high ceiling. Yes, the team went 3-7, but greener pastures were ahead. All San Francisco had to do was wait. Stage 2 may as well have been the stage of Dante for the Shock. After an entire stage of subpar play outside of a few standout games, Dante began to perform better and better. At the beginning of the league, Dante was considered to be the Tracer's stand-in until Sinatra came of age, but Dante quickly improved into a Tracer ace. If I'm being honest, if the Overwatch League could give away a Most Improved Player award, I think it would hands down go to the former Minecraft pro. He and Babybay turned into a fearsome DPS duo, but the team went 3-7 again. It was really just an extension of Stage 1. Unfortunately, the nerfs that Mercy received starting in Stage 2 just weren't enough to remove her spot as the premier healer in the Overwatch League, which was bad news for Dak. The hastily converted Lucio main was probably one of, if not the weakest Mercy in the league. All that, however, was soon to change. In the middle of Stage 2, the Shock announced 2 new signings. One was Moth, the support player formerly from Toronto eSports, Boston's academy team. Moth would hopefully give the Shock the Mercy experience and shot calling they desperately needed. The second signing was Architect, formerly from X6 Gaming. Architect was another extremely talented DPS player that had just turned 18. While he was most renowned for his Genji play, he was the prototypical build for that ultra flex DPS that was becoming essential in Overwatch, with experience on Junkrat, Widow, Pharah, and McCree. At the same time, the players who Shock already had were finally coming of age. Sinatra made his Overwatch League debut in Week 5, and wasn't the hard carry that everyone thought he would be. Honestly, I think the hype for Sinatra at this point was so high that nothing short of a pun on Ilios carry would have satisfied it. Nevertheless, you could see the pieces of the San Francisco Shock puzzle starting to come together. Stage 3 was when the Shock finally began to reap the rewards of their patience. Super was now eligible to play, and he took the main tank slot from Nomi for the rest of the season. He wasn't the best main tank in the league, but he was definitely an improvement. Moth was also a clear upgrade over Dak on the main support role. Architect made his debut in the middle of the stage and began playing more and more often. He had a bit of a shaky start, but it wasn't too long before he broke out as a star on his Genji and Pharah. Dante reaped the benefits of Sombra's recent buffs, hacking and translocating his way to become known as the best Sombra in the league. Sinatra began to impress with his aggressive Tracer play, with some flexing on the Junkrat and Zarya. Even though most of his team was playing together for the first time again since Stage 1, the Shock managed a 6-4 record in Stage 3, just narrowly missing out on the stage playoffs. Also, the Shock added one more player to their roster. Choi Hyobin, the off-tank specialist, would round out their 12-man roster. Choi Boy, as he's called in my Discord, join my Discord, was one of Architect's former teammates in X6 Gaming. However, this caused some questions to be asked. Nevix had actually been performing very well on D.Va, but maybe having an off-tank that had synergy with Architect would be nice? What would the Shock's head coach, Brad, do? As it turns out, Brad would do nothing. Between Stage 3 and 4, the Shock announced that they would be undergoing a huge coaching change. Brad was out, and Krusty was in. Krusty, of course, was the coach that had been at the helm of a Boston Uprising that had just gone 10-0 in Stage 3, so the Shock were obviously ecstatic to have him. In the middle of the stage, Choi Hyobin finally came into town and got a bit of playing time where he impressed on D.Va and Roadhog. Also, Krusty made an interesting choice by reintroducing Babybay into the rotation, who hadn't seen much stage time since Stage 2, when Sinatra became eligible. Krusty seems to want to turn Babybay into the NA Pine, mostly subbing him in to play McCree on control maps, and it paid off. Most, if not all, of the maps that Babybay was subbed into were wins. Unfortunately, the Shock weren't quite settled in yet. Who could blame them with the constant flux in coaches and players? They ended up with a middling 5-5 record in Stage 4, but hey, at least we got to see IDDQD play a map.
Alright, bit of flanky, I see you there, headshot on Dia. IDDQD opens up the account there, wrapping around the backside, he's found another one, Ultrix missing, making 3 for IDDQD, oh, he'll take 4!
So, no, the San Francisco Shock did not win in Season 1. However, the Shock were not built to win in Season 1. Real quick, let's take a look at the ages of what is assumed to be the starting 6 on the Shock moving forward. Yeah, This team is young and hungry, with more measured experience on the bench backing them up, and one of the top coaches in the world directing them. They are built to succeed for years to come. Heck, even next year, the Shock are expected to secure a playoff spot if they don't compete for the title altogether. The only question for me is, can the Shock put it all together? Despite all the potential and one of the most loaded rosters in the league, the Shock were unable to make even one stage final. They're still very inconsistent and are known for putting themselves in favorable positions on defense just to choke a map away on offense. That's why my final grade for the San Francisco Shock in Season 1 of the Overwatch League is a C. I hope they shock the world next season. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't get tilted. Peace nut.